Is abortion a woman's rights issue? Let's talk about it. Hey, what's up, friends? My name is Eric. Here at Kingdom Clarity, our goal is to bring biblical clarity to a controversial world. And so today we're going to talk about a highly controversial subject of abortion. And I don't know what your experience with abortion has been, if it's just been you have a strong opinion, but you've never walked through it. Maybe you're watching today and you've experienced this personally. You've gone through with this procedure. In fact, 25% of Christian women statistically have had an abortion. And so what I want to do is I want to talk about this subject that is highly divisive. It could be very triggering for some if you've experienced it and you have pain or regret about something in your past. I want to approach this in truth and grace. And so I want to have grace towards the person who is either struggling with understanding this or pain from their past. But if I were to ask this question, do you think that abortion is a women's rights issue? I wonder how you'd respond to that. Because that's kind of how the narrative has been pushed now. Obviously, things politically become, commercials, and you see them all the time. And you have one candidate who says this and another says this, and they'll use it against each other. And I've heard this a lot that this is a women's rights issue, like similar to like voting and slavery, like putting it in that same box of importance. And so if we were to ask that question, is abortion a women's rights issue? I'm going to get out in front of this just so you know where I'm coming from. And I would say absolutely not. There's no way that this can be a women's rights issue in the same way that it can't be a man's rights issue, because we are not the one who gets to decide and choose where life comes from and when life ends. That's not something that we've ever been tasked with as people. And so again, I'm coming from a Christian worldview. You have to understand that, right? And so I want to make a case that first, life begins at conception. Conception is the moment where well, you know what happens, okay? When the sexual act has happened between a man and a woman, and when that takes place, that is when the baby is actually conceived. Now, this was not something that was debated medically for hundreds and hundreds of years. This was agreed upon by non-believing medical practitioners that the baby's life began at conception, when the sperm and the egg, when they met and they came together and formed the beginning stages of a life. And so this was agreed upon biologically, and we see definitively in the Bible that it is God who creates life, and that life began in the womb, not once it comes out of the womb. Like all of these arguments that are happening right now, like a life doesn't begin until it's out of the womb. Like that's just nonsense. It's not biblical, and it's certainly not biological. And so let me just pose this in a different way. So some people have argued it's just a clump of cells. It's the same as some bacteria that's found somewhere else in the world, but we'll celebrate a little cell that we find on Mars, but we'll say that a cell that's creating life inside of a womb isn't valuable. But let me ask you this. So if there is a baby being formed inside of the womb, and some would say, well, that's just cells, but it will become a baby. If it stays in that environment, in the womb, there's only one thing it can become. It can't become a loaf of bread. It can't become a car tire. It can't become anything other than a human being, a life. And so to say that, because it's 2 weeks or 20 weeks or 35 weeks, and it hasn't fully come out of the womb yet, that's not life, it's ridiculous. It has always been life. And then about 30 years ago, we got really cute and thought we could outsmart human biology, the basics of life, and totally denied the Bible. So from a Christian worldview, here's what we know about life. Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 4, it says, "The word of the Lord came to me saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Okay, so we can see a very clear picture that life begins in the womb. Not once it comes out, it's already life. And so we have to deny that argument that says because it's developing, because this baby can't take care of itself yet. Okay, well, leave a 3-month-old baby all by themselves. They can't take care of themselves either. So what are we supposed to just discard 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, up to what age? 3-year-olds. If you left them completely alone, they can't take care of themselves. They need a parent. And so those arguments, they don't make any sense. Psalm chapter 139, verse 13. David says, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb." We find out again, where does life begin? In the womb, at conception, through a mother only. Verse 14, "I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be." And so this is a biblical truth. It's a scientific truth that life begins at conception. But we have an issue with abortion. I'm going to talk specifically about America. I'm not going to give you worldwide statistics, but since abortion was legalized, over 50 million babies have been killed. 50 million. And statistics show us that 93% of those 50 million babies, 93% of those abortions occurred during the first trimester. Because the argument becomes, well, what if it's for the safety of the woman's life? Well, we're not talking about in the third trimester where things become complicated and you have breaches, you have all of these different issues that come up medically. We're talking about the first trimester. And 93% of those abortions were done during that time period. And there's a strong argument to make that the reason that 93% of abortions take place in the first trimester is it is an interruption. They are an inconvenience. They are an unwanted pregnancy. That either the mother, the father, both, one of them does not want this baby for financial reasons, for lifestyle reasons. And so it's a startling statistic. We're not talking about safety, right? Because I know some people want to bring up incest and rape, and we'll talk about it in a moment. It's less than 1% of all the abortions that take place. The abortion argument doesn't hinge on those two things because over 99% of abortions are done outside of those cases, and 93% of them are in the first trimester. And so some sad things about where we are in America as it's related to abortion. Do you know it's easier to get an abortion than it is a passport? Like, go try to get an abortion. You'll get it done the week of. You'll get it done in a few hours. I mean, it's easy. Getting a passport is more difficult than getting an abortion. They have made it so accessible. And I know some people will say, well, okay, give me biblical proof that abortion is wrong, right? The Bible doesn't say do not abort your babies. Okay, fine. The Bible doesn't specifically say anything about abortion, doesn't use this word. But in the 6th commandment, we get thou shalt not murder. Okay? Now, some are going to be appalled that we would call abortion murder. But let's define what is murder. Murder is the premeditated killing of one human by another. It's the premeditated. Abortion's premeditated. Killing of a life, the life inside of the mother's womb, whether it is 1 day into the period after conception or if it is full term. That is a baby. That is a living organism, a human being that will come and produce a full life. And so the premeditated killing of one human being by another. I know this is hard to hear, but that's what abortion is. And so if we know that life begins at conception, I think there's enough biblical and scientific proof that that is true. If human life begins at conception, we have to ask ourselves the question, is it okay to kill another human being? Is that where we are in culture and in humanity, that we are not just okay with it, but we applaud it? And we run political platforms specifically on protecting the right for women to kill children. That's intense. So a life in the womb has always been considered a life. And I'm going to take you back thousands of years in biblical history. And I want you to see in the book of Exodus, okay, well before anything had ever been found about, using medical equipment and all of the things we now have to kind of see into the womb. They didn't know any of those things, but they knew that when there was a baby developing inside of a baby, that was a human life. Thousands of years ago, here's what we find out. Exodus chapter 21. Here was the law. The law says, if people are fighting and hit a pregnant woman and she gives birth prematurely, but there is no serious injury, the offender must be fined whatever the woman's husband demands and the court allows. But if there is serious injury, you are to take life for life. Okay, the life of the person who's committed the violent act against the mom who was pregnant. If the baby's life is lost, their life is lost as well, because they considered it life. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. And so this law that we see here in the law of Moses, it clearly indicates that God considers a baby in the womb to be just as much of a human being as a grown adult, like a full-grown adult. God views them the exact same. And so for the Christian, abortion is not a matter of women's rights. They get to choose to have a baby or not. The baby is already present and living inside of the womb. And so abortion is a matter of life or death on a human being that was made in God's image. That's what abortion is. We are choosing to keep this baby that is made in God's image. And we'll talk about, what if I can't afford it? What if I don't have a good environment to raise this child in? That's a secondary conversation. But we can't just say that any inconvenience, any undesirable pregnancy, because we have legal rights to do it, that God is somehow okay and in favor of this. So let's talk about one of the main objections. You hear this. What about incest and rape? Okay, so abortions due to incest and rape account for less than 1% of all abortions. And so this is a argument for abortion, but it's a very rare instance where this is actually what people are dealing with in order to consider, should I have an abortion or not? And so what I would say to this is, we don't justify one evil act, which is incest and rape, by committing another. Like we don't treat evil with evil. We treat evil with good. And again, I'm coming from a Christian worldview. And so if I were running for office or something to that effect, I would try to pass laws that would say, you know what? We believe every life is valuable. And as soon as we start giving permission to humans to kill other humans for any reason, we are going down a dark path in society, and this will destroy us, right? And so a way to combat that is, if a woman is raped or is the product of incest, I would say we don't commit evil because of evil. So we believe God is going to make something good of this baby's life. And what we should do is we should castrate the man who did it, and we should put them in prison for life. Put them in solitary confinement for the rest of their life after castration. How about that? Like, the idea that terminating life somehow makes good of it, it's to me, it's evil for evil. So, but what about the mom, right? Because she's the one that has to carry this baby, and she was raped and product of incest. Like, this is horrific for her. And so before I end this video, at the end of today's video, I am going to give next step resources for that mom specifically, programs, options for her to be supported and to have actual genuine care while she is walking out this really, really traumatic season. So just stay tuned to the end. We will definitely find a way to get you resources. What about when the life of the mother is at risk? This is another argument that you hear but you don't really ever hear any statistical data around it. Like it's a compelling argument. Well, what if it's the baby or the woman? Like how can you be the one to choose that? Okay, that is not how abortions happen. Those aren't even called abortions. If the mother's life is being saved, they don't call that an abortion. So they did a survey in 2012, and they surveyed over 1,000 OBGYNs and healthcare experts. And these experts signed their name on a statement trying to counteract this argument that, it's either the mother or the baby. Here's what they said. As experienced practitioners and researchers in gynecology, we affirm that direct abortion, the purposeful destruction of the unborn child, is not medically necessary to save the life of a woman. Okay? So remember, we want to trust the science. Well, the science says, and the doctors who actually are responsible for these procedures, they affirm that direct abortion, the destruction of the unborn child, is not medically necessary to save the life of a woman. So that argument it's a red pill. It's a red herring. It's not a real argument for abortion, but maybe you've heard it and it sounds compelling. So more statistical data, 99% of abortions have been shown to come from people that for various reasons cannot or do not want to bring this child into their life. 99% of abortions. This isn't for the outlying cases. This is something that has become so accessible and so optional and so applauded that nearly everybody who is having an abortion, they could and they should bring this baby into full term, into life. And again, I get it. I know the comments or just people, well, you're a man. So easy for you to say, you don't have to carry this baby. And I would say, you're right. I'm not a woman. And I don't know what 9 months of pregnancy is like. I don't. And that's true. But I also know that God created a plan. And if we would follow his plan, which means I'm going to reserve my sexuality until I'm married, I think we could fix this abortion problem very, very quickly as a nation. What if we just fell in love and we dated and we were engaged and we saved sex until we were married? We solve this abortion problem forever. But the truth is, people don't want to. They're selfish. They have their own lustful desires, and they're going to do what they want to do. And it doesn't matter that if they have sex with multiple partners and become pregnant, because I can end this pregnancy very easily whenever I want. And that's a real problem, I think, as a nation. And so what is the job that we hold as a church? What is the job of Christians, men and women? I believe that we are tasked and called by God to love and protect the vulnerable. And so we see that Jesus is in his ministry, he's always emphasizing that we should care for the weak and the vulnerable and the innocent. And I believe that, yes, Christians are called to protect those who cannot protect themselves. And that would be children, not even unborn children, but children in general. And most people would say, yes, that's our job. But what about the children that don't have a voice yet? Those that are in the womb but are absolutely life in the image of God. I believe that that is a responsibility, and silence is not the way forward. Again, this is not culturally appropriate. People will not agree with this message because they've made it into a women's rights issue. It's not. This is a human rights issue, and that baby is a human, and they have inalienable rights because they were created by God. And that's not our job to say if their life doesn't matter or isn't meaningful. And so I want to kind of close out this conversation by maybe just talking to the person who's maybe riddled with grief. And maybe you've gone through an abortion, or you've considered it, or you're still considering it. And there's a lot of a hurt and pain and even some traumatic memories. And I want you to know something. If you are a child of God, you know Jesus as your Lord, and you have asked for forgiveness, can I just tell you, you are forgiven. You are forgiven by God. You do not need to walk in that shame and guilt and condemnation. You have been forgiven. You can't change what happened and what was done, but you could be a mouthpiece of warning for other people. And you could be a recipient of God's grace today. Yes, abortion is sin, but it's no less sin than other sins that we still need to ask for forgiveness for. And so for a man, that maybe you've pushed a woman to have an abortion. She didn't really want to, but you didn't want to step up and be a father. I would ask you today, repent of that sin. And if you have, you've been forgiven. But it's time for us to man up as a nation and accept our responsibilities and what a blessing and a gift children are. And so this great deception that is permeating our culture, and especially the younger generation, this is the only culture that they know now because they're being born into this. My body, my choice. And kids are inconvenient. Kids are disposable. And so we believe, here's my belief, and I'll speak on behalf of many faithful Christians. We believe in protecting life from the womb to the tomb. It's not, yes, it is about the unborn baby, but it's also about the middle-aged man or woman that's dealing with depression. It's the elderly person that is, getting ready to exit this life. And it's much bigger than just the life of the unborn. It's from the womb to the tomb. That's the job of the Christian. Like we care for those who are in need, those who are hurting. And so what are some actual options? Well, foster care and adoption are options for someone who is considering an abortion, but it doesn't feel right in your conscience. What do I do? There is foster care and there is adoption. And I know there'll be people that will just hammer the adoption system and the foster care system. And so I'll acknowledge some things. The system is not great. It's broken in many ways. They make it far too difficult to get children into great parents' homes. The bureaucracy of it and the paperwork. Yes, it is coming from a place of protection, but it's kind of a mess. But you may not know this. Do you know there are more people right now on the adoption waiting list than there will be abortions this year in America? There's 1.5 million people on the adoption list right now that say, you know what? I will take care of your baby. I will love your baby. I will support your baby. Like that life doesn't have to end because you can't take care of them. But we have to solve this issue as a society. But foster care and adoption are absolute options. And then we just trust God. God, would you take care of this life? Here locally in Glendale, we have a place called Choices Pregnancy Center. It's an incredible organization we partner with as a church. Many churches partner with them, and they are a resource for moms to go in, get an ultrasound, meet with someone immediately about the pregnancy, and then work through a plan on how to support them in their pregnancy and after the life of the baby. And so whether that's them keeping it, finding support, and we have a program at our church called Embrace Grace, and this is support that happens well after the baby is born to single mothers. But there are many different programs. And so Choices Pregnancy Center in particular, they have this program called Hope and Healing, and it's to walk through the journey of healing that comes after abortion, if you've gone through that. And so this is a program that's built to be non-judgmental, and you can go through it and receive helpful advice, prayer, and healing. And so if you've had an abortion and you need a support group and you're here in Arizona, at least, I would say check out Choices Pregnancy Center. Ask about the Hope and Healing program. It could be a big blessing to you. So I hope today was helpful. I do not want to slam my fist down and say, like, I don't understand how hard this decision can be. It's probably earth-shattering to many. But man, God is the beginning and the end of our life. And I'm just believing that God will make good out of bad. And so, man, I love to hear from you in the comments. I'm sure I will. I hope that this has helped you, and I hope to see you back here next week for Kingdom Clarity.